Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our quick interview here. You know myself and Mackenzie from the Case Competition Planning Committee, but I want to introduce you to one of our mentors if you don't already know him. Pete Collins, our Senior Vice President of Personal Insurance Operations at Travelers, was a mentor for teams in 2019, the team that Mackenzie and I were on. Is also a mentor for our current team in 2021 here, Hunger Heroes. So I wanted to take the time today to ask Pete a few questions about what his experience has been like as a mentor and see if he can give some helpful advice for teams that are navigating this transition period between round one and round two and potentially the finals from there. So to start, Pete, could you tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you as a mentor to help these teams navigate, being a new group together, getting those team dynamics set up and getting them ready for success?
Yeah, obviously one of the key differences compared to when we were working together a couple of years ago is it's virtual. So, we're not face to face at all. But the virtual nature has actually been quite nice because the team I've got are all from the same organisation, but they've never met each other. They're all located in different parts of the country. So we've been able to spread the net a little bit wider. So they've got similar backgrounds, again, different to the team that we had previously. Similar backgrounds, but haven't met each other. They've come from different functions, so they're all adding something in. But because they've got those similar backgrounds, they're on the same page and aligned on a lot of their thinking from the same organisation and the way they've actually approached the problem. But they're playing to their strengths in their own areas. It was interesting early on in the team dynamics where one or two people would always take the lead in the meetings to replay back things they'd thought about, where they're taking the ideas. And what I've encouraged them to do is all have a voice during those meetings as well, because they're all going to present, they're all going to represent the idea in front of the judges. And that's been something that they've learned from and definitely progressed in over the last couple of weeks.
Now, you mentioned that they all have kind of similar ways of thinking, similar approaches to problems. Has there been any opportunities, whether it's this iteration of the case competition or the past iteration, where you kind of had to pull teams out of a path they were pursuing or an idea or something they were highlighting that you think, oh, that might be confusing for judges, or maybe that's not quite on the mark. I don't want to overstep my bounds here, but they need to be pulled in a slightly different direction. And what's that been like for you?
I think the brief we got was really useful because it lays out what the essential elements are. So there are things that you have to produce. You have to produce a PSA, for example. It says that, so you have to produce a PSA. It talks about the weighting, so that the weighting really helps. So I think it's often useful just to revisit and say, are we actually fulfilling what we're asked to do here? Because you've got limited time, 10 minutes in round one, 15 minutes in round two, and you want to pack a lot of things in there to make sure you fit the brief. Don't go off track. Stay within the brief, stay within the scope, and that's actually a really, really good guiding principle.
Now, were you able to take part in any of the practice rounds for any of your teams, or were they able to give you something for you to provide feedback to them? What was that like for you?
Yeah, we're meeting a couple of times a week. We do a little bit by email, but we're meeting twice a week. We had a dry run on the presentation to me and some of my team actually, and also they did a bunch of dry runs themselves. They're sharing the presentation with me. So I think there's a constant feedback loop going on, which is really important. My job's not to do their role for them, it's to advise them. And at the end of the day, they decide to take that advice. That's entirely up to them. But yeah, we're meeting regularly, lots of feedback and good discussion within the group. And they'll come along and say, we're working down there, here's something we're struggling with. What do you think? And I'll just give them some different ways, different thoughts of addressing it. But I have to say, I give them a little bit of direction. They go off and come back with some amazing creative ways of approaching problems, just like you did. The thing I love about this is all the work that's presented by any of the teams is the real work of the team. It's not the mentor who's doing it for them. So it's a fun role, and I'm really enjoying it.
So you talk about feedback, right? And you and your team giving feedback to some of the practice rounds. Now that our teams have gotten back judges' feedbacks from round one, right? Looking at the rubrics, looking at some of the maybe pointed feedback that some teams may have gotten. What are you doing to suggest to your team and all teams really to kind of get through that feedback and just work on improvement and focusing on round two?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things first and foremost is, and the team did not take it this way, but I would say this for any team, the feedback's not personal. The feedback's there to help and to help you grow, help you develop, because the purpose of this competition, it might be competition, it's not to win. The purpose of competition is for personal growth and development, for the leaders involved in it. And I had feedback for them after the presentation as well. I took copious notes, and there's things I thought we could have done better, because it's a team, for round two. And so they took that. They've also taken the feedback that came from the judges, which was good feedback. It was all all very, very helpful. So we just work through it. They've got ideas about how they'll address it. They've worked on that and are continuing to do so. And that'll be reflected in the executive summary in their round 2 presentation. So it's all valuable. It's all really useful, and they've taken it that way.
So in some of the feedback and also some of the experience for our participants here, some teams may not look 100% the exact same in round 1 and round 2. There might be, somebody might be missing from round 1. Maybe somebody has a work obligation and can't come to round 2. Obviously, teams have to navigate some unexpected twists and turns. Whether it was your experience in 2019 or 2021, how have you helped your teams navigate those twists that they weren't expecting?
Yeah, well, because you experienced it yourselves. You were -1 of the players. You only had 3 in the team, and you were a duo in one of them. And we had something similar in a dry run. Somebody who was on PTO couldn't make it to a dry run. Another member of the team covered for them, and I would say it was less about me helping them, to be honest, Ryan. They figured it out themselves that we have to deliver it. We have to make sure we get through it, just like you did when you were faced with something similar, and you work it out amongst you as a team, decide how we approach it, who's going to cover that person. I don't think I brought anything magic to the party there. They worked it out themselves, just like you did a couple of years ago.
Now, I know you've talked a lot about how the teams are really leading the efforts, obviously, and that's by design. For you, how have you approached giving suggestions for teams, right? Because between round 1, they had about 10 minutes to present, and now round 2, they have 15. Usually, these competitions, you get less and less time, but opening the floor for teams invites the opportunity to try and put too much into a conversation or too much into a presentation. What kind of warnings, suggestions, ideas have you given teams to make sure that they're trying to balance this additional time with still covering all the stuff that they really effectively covered in round 1?
Yeah, I guess one of the ways was to say, don't feel like you have to fill every minute of the 15 minutes. Don't pad things out, but 15 minutes isn't a long time to get through those concepts. Also, again, go back to the brief, see where the points are going to be allocated, see where things are going to be more important. And then finally, look at the feedback from the judges, because the feedback from the judges, in the case of Hunger Heroes, and I'm sure for others, suggest some things that maybe weren't as clear or needed to be worked on. That might mean you take a little bit more time explaining something that wasn't as clear, perhaps, for the judges than you wanted it to be. So there's lots of different ways you can use the time. That extra 5 minutes can be used very effectively and very quickly.
Thanks for that. Mackenzie, before I start talking about moving between round 2 and even further in the competition, do you have any other questions here that might be helpful for Pete to share for our competing teams?
I just wanted to say thank you, for being part of our case competition again this year. Your team is very lucky to have you, as were we a couple of years ago. I just want to echo some of the things that Pete's already touched on. For me, I thought that the hardest part was pivoting to how to bring something different to the next round. And like Pete alluded to, we had 2 people in the first round, and then we went to the third person. And one thing that I think is really key in responding to feedback is making sure that you don't lose all of the things that were great about your presentation by fixing the things that maybe you had some areas of opportunity on. And so by being focused on what your strengths are and making sure that your strengths shine louder than the areas where maybe you're weaker, I think it was the hardest part, but I think part of what made us so successful in our pivot to the final round. And something else that Pete mentioned is the goal isn't to win. The goal is for the professional growth and development that you get through this, and then obviously to make an impact on the community we have here. And I want to just echo that very strongly. Our team made it to the finals, and we did not walk away champions, but we were so moved and had so much growth during the process that many of us are still back here. This is 3 out of 4 of our team members, and from 2019. And I think that's a testament to the experience. So as you're pivoting, as you're responding to feedback, don't be afraid to just live in that experience a little bit longer and think about what it means for you longer term. So that's my thoughts there.
Thanks, Mackenzie. All right, so Pete, before we let you go, just a final question for you, right? We know that round 2 is coming up very soon, sooner than we all may hope, right? We're running out of time here. But for preparing for round two, and for those teams that are selected to move on to the finals, what are some kind of points of encouragement you might have, or things to remember as our people are going over the next couple of weeks in this competition?
Well, I think Mackenzie just said that don't get rid of all the great stuff that you put in. The fact that if somebody goes from round two to round three, then they clearly put in really hard work, a lot of great work, and a great presentation, and building on that will be important, but not losing the great from it as well. And I come back to use the brief, use the feedback from the judges, because that is key. Making sure you deliver the elements, making sure you work on what you've been told needed focus, keep what's great, and you're going to be in good shape.
Thank you. I think that's advice that all of our teams can take into round two. And for those of you that do move on to the finals, I'm sure that's feedback that's going to be, very much well heeded, and you'll have plenty of other opportunities to make practices between those rounds. So thank you to Pete and Mackenzie for your time today. And those of you that are watching and participating in the case competition, we wish you all the best of luck in round two. And for those of you who make it to the finals, congratulations on that step, and we'll see you all soon. So thanks for watching.